Hi YouTube, we're here with the Cirrus SR22T 1.5 meter from Horizon Hobby. Just got this puppy the other day. It looks beautiful. Did our unboxing last night. When I say the other day, I mean last night or this morning technically. And one thing I failed to mention is that this nose comes off. You have to kind of lift up the front because there's magnets, and then there's these two keys, and that is a really good idea, by the way, Horizon. Good job. But it's also a really good idea because then you can get in there and put the nose gear in, and look how much easier it's going to be to put on my XT60. So anyway, that's what we're doing now. We're going to put on some XT60 and we're going to take off the EC. What is that, an EC3? I think it's an EC3. Yep, I don't use EC3s. They're one-time use, so you build the end and then you got to slide them in and they snap. I don't like that. I like that you can redo these. I don't like that you have to use heat shrink, but that's life. These you don't have to use heat shrink if you do it right. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this for later use and cut it off. So obviously it's not a battery, so you can cut both leads at the same time. If it's a battery, you'd want to maybe not do that, unless you're trying to burn yourself. Okay, so we got the leads cut. Now we can slide on some heat shrink. Real quick part number update. This is from Hobby King. That's the red. This is the black. This I got from Lemon RX. And if you wanted to get them from Hobby King, then this just happens to be the black ones here. So if you need a part number, it's 5 pairs. Price point ends up being about similar, but it just depends on if it's in stock when you're ordering what you're ordering, in my experience. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my electronic speed control, lift it up, slide the heat shrink down the lengths of each side so I don't have to think about it. Get those ready to rock. This can be laid aside for now. You notice I have them plugged together. That's to help dissipate heat. So you can imagine this is like what the battery would look like. So this is what's going to go on the plane. Okay. And then I usually take my forceps, or you could use a pair of, locking pliers or something to that extent. And I usually grab onto whichever lead I'm going to work on. This is why I like them so much. They fit into, well, among other things, but they fit right in there. I grabbed the wrong end. Okay, then I can lock them on there. You don't have to worry about them coming out. So we can take our red line and black line and strip back. Usually you need a pretty good amount. Let's just verify that. So the red side. So let's see how far down we can slide that. Perfect. See that? Maximizing the contact without subtracting any more insulation than you absolutely have to. That was pure luck, guys. I didn't have that planned out or measured or anything. Sometimes you get lucky. And these little pieces, of course, shoot all over the place. I keep those, which is weird, I know. But those things are good to hold clevises closed. If you've seen in my videos some of these same things I mentioned, but I know some of you guys are just getting into this, and so you may not have seen some of these little tips. Okay, so just do a dry fit, make sure it fits, and it definitely does. Okay, so now we're going to take our soldering iron, which has been heating up for the last few minutes. Use this chemical tip cleaner, and then we're going to use a mechanical tip cleaner. Then we're going to get back into the chemical. Put a little solder on there. Now, Now would be the time if you're going to renegotiate any of the wires that belong to the ESC. Looks like everything is pretty satisfactory the way it is, so we're not going to mess with it any more than it has to be. The other thing is I want these to hang out here so we don't have to worry about them flopping back in the whole time. So I'm going to grab, you could use a chip clip if you don't have a bunch of little clips like this. In fact, these work really nice as chip clips, to be honest. In fact, I think we have a few of these up there on our chips. And they're cheap. It's like $1 or $2 for a big package of them. We'll just do one at a time here, so we'll just hang on to the one wire. And that'll keep it away from the foam too, which is kind of nice. Okay, and then we can use the forceps so you can hold these back a ways without having to worry about getting so hot. And you see how these XT60s that come from Lemon have kind of like an up and a down. So obviously we want to have it in that certain direction. Okay, then we can heat up, get a little solder here to bridge. Put the heat to the work. Then let the solder wick into the work. It's one thing to do this, guys, when you're first starting, but if you're touching the soldering iron to get solder to work, you're not doing it right. You need to heat up the work and let the solder flow through the work. The idea is you want to maximize the contact. Okay, now what I'm going to do here is a little bit more subjective, of course. We're going to touch this, get a little bit of a build up on it. We're going to touch the outside just as little as possible. We're just going to ride some solder in there. Of course, it runs low right when I need it there. I kind of point that back down. That's how I do that. Okay, so let it get nice and warm. We're not trying to fill the entire cavity, but we're going to get it pretty close. Probably about half or so. Okay? So now when we go to do this, you want it to be going downhill because solder is heavy and it will go downhill. So heat up around it, then get the work touching, and then work it very slowly in so it doesn't go everywhere. Like it did. Let it cool for just a second so that you can get that problem fixed. I'm going to show you the problem here. See that problem, guys? It's going to make it very difficult to get my heat shrink down now. So what I'm going to do is I will actually go ahead and I might actually move over and do the other side. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm just going to heat it like this. This may want to twist the wire when it heats up. That's fine. As long as it doesn't spit out in your eye. Okay, watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to just get up in there, get a little bit of solder on the tip, help bridge to the work, get the heat going, touching the wire. Now watch what happens, guys. It's just going to come around. Come on now. I'm just kind of moving the wire back and forth. Now it's going to start wicking. Now it's wicked to the other side somewhat. So now I'm going to heat this side a little bit more. And you can see it's just going to let that solder go around to the other side. Just let gravity work to your advantage. Okay, so now let it cool for a second. It only takes a second for it to be hard to the touch. Oh yeah, that worked out real nice. Okay, see, we can slide the heat shrink down into the collar now. Okay, so now this thing's not even really too hot until you get to about there. It's pretty hot, so just be careful. Don't burn yourself. So now I'm going to clip it onto the negative one. Okay, see, that's positive and positive. So just double check your work as you go if you can. So this is pretty hot right now, so you could try to slide the heat shrink down, but a lot of times it'll end up shrinking before you get it all the way over your work. So if you can wait. Okay, so I'm going to hold this down just a little bit at the angle I think I want it to be. That little chip clip thing worked nice, didn't it? Okay, so getting into the tip cleaner, mechanically cleaning it, touch the tip. Let it get into the wire. Okay, just letting it work here. Splatter that. Okay, so now I'm going to take this and just make sure it's not got like a nasty twist in it. If it has a nasty twist in it, you might need to evaluate whether or not you want to try to spin it. Dang it. Solder's wiped off on there. That's kind of annoying. Okay, so now I'm going to get a little bit more of this solder pulled up, just like this, and make that loop. And then that loop will allow you to use your other hand to manipulate the connector into it. But in this case, I need to set it up here. I got a little bit of solder there now. So now I'm going to just push that in there. Okay, so now I can take the tip and kind of clean this a little bit. It's kind of got a little bit of that buildup from the impurities on the solder. Okay, so we're good there. So now I need to do something that I don't always have to do on this, but that impurity, that big black chunk, I want to get that off of there. It's very hot, of course. So don't just reach out and try to do it with your fingertip. You won't be able to work quick enough to not get burned. Okay, so now it did the same thing, so we'll just have this upside down, I guess, initially. So we'll go ahead and heat this. We've got a stray wire that's going sideways, so I'm going to try to get that oriented by sliding down the length of it. Then I'm going to let it heat up. Now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to let it fling. Let it heat. Fling. See? Now it just shot off some of the excess solder. Okay, so now we can go ahead and... looks like we're kind of tangling over ourselves a little bit, but we'll see if we can get it to work. Okay, slid it in the hole. Heating it up. Trying to get both heated at the same time, preferably. Now heat rises, normally you would want to do this the other way, but since this connector, the drip, went underneath, this is the way we're going to have to do it, so the heat shrink will be effective. Okay, so now we're going to let that cool for a second, just applying a little bit of pressure. It's wanting to walk away from me. That's no big deal. Okay, that should be sturdy enough to be able to move it at least. Okay, so now we're going to look at the work and just make sure everything turned out well. Yeah, we got it good. Okay, so that's pretty much it on the XT60 edition. We just got to throw that heat shrink down, so let's do that next. Soldering iron, we're done with this for now. We can put our little clippy deal away. We should be done with this. Now, if you need to cool it, you can put some Windex on here and cool it down that way. Or you can just wait a little longer. I think in this case I'm going to just wait on the black wire because that's still really hot. The red wires, incidentally, still feels nice and warm. Toasty there. Oh yeah, that's hot. Real hot on the tip. So I'm going to go ahead and undo this. If you wanted to cool that down in a hurry, you would take a cool tool and you could touch it alongside of it. And it would actually cool it a little quicker. Something like this, for instance, it's nice big mass of metal, and you would just take and hold on to it for a second, and that would help cool it down a little quicker if you were concerned, or if you were in a big hurry. Or you put water on it if you don't mind getting all the impurities on there. But you can see how much that cooled. It was like a very quick thing. Okay, so red and black need to come down. I'm going to do one at a time. Just have your ducks in a row before you start sliding it, or it might shrink before it gets all the way down. Okay, all the way down. Grab yourself a lighter or torch. Make sure you're seated where you want. And just heat shrink it down. If you ever have heat shrink split on you, you use too small a heat shrink. because it has a certain compression ratio. It's designed to shrink quite a bit. Okay, so that's that, and then you can unplug your simulation of a battery end. And the next step, guys, is going to be the full-blown build video. And to be honest with you, the build video on this plane, I suspect, is going to actually be really easy. But I've been proven wrong many times before. This might be the most recent one. Let's go ahead and get this closed up, show you how that goes on. See, there's that little plastic insert there and there. You just kind of walk this down, and then it sits on there like that. The other thing is, I was thinking about putting a piece of tape on here, because I do not like reaching down for the doorknobs. And the clear tape has never bothered me on these planes. One thing that's a little bit of a bummer is, like right here, there's a little bit of a squish mark on it, which I don't think I did that. It's possible. But the other thing is, I don't like where these wires ended up. I'm not a big fan of that. That's for the elevator and rudder. And so I'm not 100% sure how that's all going to work out. But I was a little disappointed by the way that those two wires ran up there. Because really, it seems to me that there might have been a better way to manipulate the wires. The good news is it's more or less unseen. But, oh, well, I guess we could just do this tape thing right now real quick. I think I'm going to use, actually, this tape. This tape will be just fine. Sometimes I've gotten ahead of myself and tried to get real picky about what type of tape and stuff. This is just really good tape. So it's just, you know, office supply sort of tape. Nothing fancy about it. And when you do these, make sure you give yourself a pretty long piece of it, because if you cut a little too short, then you can't always peel the paint. You can't always peel the tape off, because you're going to end up with paint coming off too. So err on the safe side, make it a little bit longer. And what you'll do is you'll start on the finished part. And to keep your fingerprints off of it, you can just kind of run it down like this, guys. Get it as centered as you can. Just kind of drag it with the edge there, and then push it in the middle. And you can walk that back. And that way what will happen is, as this relaxes, it'll relax flat. So it's still fairly easy to get to. And there's going to be an antenna here, so I just don't want to get too crazy on how much I leave puckered up. So I'm just going to be really sparing with the amount I leave on there. And yeah, it's maybe not as pretty as having the handles, but you know what? It's got to be functional, guys. It's got to be functional. Because, I mean, think about it. How many times you take this on and off. Every time you're flying it, I mean, for like literally every flight, you're going to open and close it once. So, and if this antenna becomes a problem, then I can take and cut a groove in there or something. But you can't even see it, guys. And it's going to help to protect the finish on there. I'm a little nervous about that antenna being right there, though. We'll have to wait and see. Oh, and one other thing I was thinking about, in the unboxing, if you watch, you'll know what I'm talking about. We had one of these handles that was loose. So I'm just kind of curious how that got it attached the first time. Looks like they used kind of like a rubbery tape or something. Or not a rubbery tape, but feels like, oh yeah, so that's, yeah, it's just that silicone-y stuff that they use. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little bit of CA. We'll go for foam safe, medium thickness. Tips working already. Just get a little bit of CA on there. Cover that whole surface, because it's going to go inside the wing, or not the wing, inside the fuselage above the window there. So we should have no problem with that. Now I'm going to take the kicker, rather than applying kicker to this, once I get it plugged in there, and actually kind of take this silicone-y stuff off. And because it's super slick, you know, so the CA is not going to stick very well. And I'm actually just taking, I could also use the pops in your hand, not in your mouth, glue from Hobby King, which incidentally, that stuff would have worked pretty good. So if you decided you want to do that, this is the part number. This stuff works really good for foamies. Oh, upside down. It's called a mucilage. And this is a large size. And it works really good, but it does dry out over time. So anyway, getting back to the point, spray it with some kicker before you insert it, and then go ahead and Make sure you have it all oriented right, and then go ahead and slide it in. And then if you have Q-tips lying around like I do, then you can take and just spin it, and that'll take any little teeny bit of excess. We didn't even touch any, I don't think. So then, yeah, it's already set up. Feels good. This side feels good too. Now, obviously, that rubbery stuff would work nice. That silicone-y stuff that they use. Because then if you bump it or whatever, it might stay. But my guess is it's not going to stay. Alright guys, next video coming up is going to be the build video, followed shortly by the radio setup, or kind of together. Not 100% sure. Thanks a lot for watching. What a beautiful plane though, guys. That thing is sure gorgeous. Except for Mr. Pinocchio's nose. He's not a liar. I wish he would tell some lies so that his nose would get a little bit bigger. We may have to change that, guys. But other than that, really like the plane so far. Go get yourself one for $230. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.